Once upon a time, in a quiet town nestled between rolling green hills and a wide, slow river, there lived a 27-year-old man named Ethan. Ethan was not a bad person. In fact, he was quite talented. He had a gift for painting. His brush strokes were fluid and alive. When he painted, even strangers would stop and stare. His colors had a way of making people feel things they couldn't explain. His mother always said, "Ethan, your paintings don't just show the world, they show what the world is feeling." But Ethan had a problem, a quiet, invisible problem that most people never saw. He was afraid, not of snakes, not of heights, not of the dark. Ethan was afraid of something far more dangerous. He was afraid of being seen, afraid of trying and failing in front of others, afraid that if he truly put his gift out into the world and the world said no, he would have nothing left to believe in. So instead, he painted only for himself. He kept his canvases stacked behind his wardrobe. He told himself he was not ready yet. He told himself that one day, when the time was right, when he felt confident enough, when everything was perfect, he would share his work. But that day never came. Because the right time, for a person who is afraid, never comes on its own. Years passed. Ethan worked at a small printing shop in town. The work was safe, the salary was steady, the days were predictable. He woke up, went to work, came home, ate dinner, and sometimes, only sometimes, opened his paints late at night when the world was quiet. Those night hours were the only hours he truly felt alive. But even then, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "Who would care about this? Who are you to think you are special?" And he listened to that voice. Every single time, he listened to it. One autumn morning, a new family moved into the house next door. Among them was an elderly woman named Mrs. Adler. She was small, with silver hair and sharp, kind eyes that seemed to notice everything. She walked slowly but moved through the world with a quiet certainty that made people pay attention. Within her first week in the neighborhood, she had already spoken to every neighbor on the street. She brought homemade bread, she remembered names, she asked real questions and waited for real answers. One evening, Ethan was sitting on his front steps, watching the sunset, when Mrs. Adler walked over with 2 cups of tea. She handed him one without asking and sat beside him. "You have paint on your hands," she said simply. Ethan looked down. A streak of deep blue ran along his left thumb. He had forgotten to wash it off. He felt a small embarrassment and rubbed it quietly against his jeans. "I paint sometimes," he said. "Just a hobby." Mrs. Adler looked at the sunset for a long moment. Then she said, "Just a hobby. That is what a man says when he loves something deeply but is too afraid to admit how much it means to him." Ethan said nothing, but something in her words landed differently than he expected. She sipped her tea and continued. "I was a teacher for 41 years. And in those 41 years, I watched hundreds of students. The ones who struggled the most were never the ones with the least talent. They were always the ones with the most, because the more gift you carry, the more you have to lose, and so the more afraid you become." She stood up slowly, handed him the empty cup and said, "Bring me something you have painted. I would like to see it." Then she walked back inside. That night, Ethan could not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, he pulled out one of his canvases from behind the wardrobe and actually looked at it. Really looked at it. Not with the critical eye of someone searching for flaws, but with the honest eye of someone seeing something for the first time. It was a painting of the river at dawn. The water was silver and still. The mist sat low above the surface. A single bird was mid-flight above the water, its wings catching the first light of the morning. It was beautiful. Even Ethan, in that rare, honest moment, could see that it was beautiful. But then the voice came again. "It is not good enough. Other people paint better. Who are you?" This time, something was different. This time, Ethan noticed the voice. He noticed it the way you notice a stranger who has been standing in your home for years. Suddenly, clearly, without pretending they belonged there, he whispered to himself, "You have been here a long time, and you have cost me a long time." The next morning, he knocked on Mrs. Adler's door, carrying the river painting wrapped in a cloth. His hands were trembling slightly. She opened the door, saw the wrapped canvas, and smiled as if she had been expecting it. She unwrapped it carefully and held it at arm's length. She looked at it for a long time without speaking. The silence felt enormous to Ethan. His heart was loud in his chest. Finally, she said, "Do you know what I feel when I look at this?" Ethan shook his head. "I feel early morning. I feel the cold before the sun warms everything. I feel the loneliness of being the only one awake in the world and not minding it at all." She looked at him. "Ethan, this is not a hobby. This is a voice. And voices like this are not meant to be hidden behind a wardrobe." Ethan looked at the floor. "I am afraid that people won't understand it." Mrs. Adler sat down and folded her hands in her lap. "Let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Comfort is not the same as safety. We think that staying where we are, staying quiet, staying small, keeps us safe, but it does not. It only keeps us stuck. And there is a very big difference between safe and stuck." She paused, then continued. "Every year you spend inside your comfort zone is a year your dream spends slowly fading. You do not feel it happening, because it happens quietly, the way a fire dies when you stop feeding it. One day you look and the flame is almost gone, and then you spend the rest of your life not chasing your dream, but mourning it." Ethan sat with those words for a long time. On his walk home, he made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not a loud one, a quiet, terrified, determined decision. He would enter the town's annual art exhibition that was announced every October. He had seen the posters for it every year for the past 6 years. Every year he had told himself, maybe next year, this year he would register. The registration required 3 paintings. Ethan went home, opened his wardrobe, and looked at the canvases stacked inside. There were dozens, years of quiet, private work staring back at him. He had never thought of them as enough. Now he realized there had always been more than enough. What was missing was not the work. What was missing was the courage to let the work be seen. He selected 3 paintings and registered that same afternoon before the voice in his head could talk him out of it. The weeks leading up to the exhibition were the most uncomfortable of Ethan's life. He second-guessed his choices. He repainted details 3 times. He almost withdrew his registration twice. Each morning he woke up with a heaviness in his chest that he didn't fully understand. But each morning he also woke up with something else, a feeling he had not felt in years. Purpose, the discomfort and the purpose, existed together, side by side, like 2 passengers on the same train going in the same direction. He learned that discomfort does not mean you are doing the wrong thing. Sometimes discomfort is exactly the proof that you are finally doing the right thing. On the morning of the exhibition, Ethan arrived early. He hung his 3 paintings on the wall and stepped back. His hands were cold, his throat was dry. The hall slowly filled with people. Strangers stood in front of his work. Some moved on quickly. Some stopped. Some stood for a long time. One man stood in front of the river painting for nearly 5 minutes. When he turned around, his eyes were slightly wet. He said nothing to Ethan but nodded slowly, the way people nod when something has touched a place inside them they cannot name. That nod changed something in Ethan forever. He did not win the exhibition, he placed 3rd, but standing on that small stage, holding that 3rd place ribbon, Ethan felt something that winning could not have given him. He felt the relief of a man who had finally stopped hiding. The weight he had carried for years was not the weight of his talent. It was the weight of keeping his talent locked inside a dark wardrobe. After the event, Mrs. Adler found him near the exit. She squeezed his hand and said only 6 words. "Now you know what was possible." Ethan nodded. He understood. In the months that followed, Ethan kept painting. He started a small online page to share his work. Not everyone loved it. Some people scrolled past without a second glance. But some people stopped. Some people wrote to him from towns and countries he had never visited, telling him that his river painting made them feel something they had not felt in a long time. He still worked at the printing shop. Life did not transform overnight, but something in him had transformed. He no longer woke up in the morning and felt the dull ache of a life unlived. He woke up with something to look forward to. And slowly, quietly, the way rivers carve through rock, not by force but by persistence, his world began to change. So my friend, is there something you have been keeping behind a wardrobe, a talent, a dream, a passion that you visit only late at night when no one is watching? A voice inside you that has been whispering for years but that you have never let speak out loud. Your comfort zone feels safe, but safety and comfort are not the same as living. Every day you spend waiting for the perfect moment is a day your dream waits too. And dreams, unlike people, do not wait forever. You do not need to be fearless. Ethan was not fearless, he was terrified, and he went anyway. That is the only kind of courage that is real, not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward while fear is still present. The wardrobe is full, it has always been full. Open the door.